Good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of my Snowrunner tutorial series. Today we will be focusing on texturing and getting some actual color onto this model and the workflow that I go about doing for this. Um, First thing I usually do is I will export parts of the truck out of Blender and into I call it like a dump folder. Basically, it's just a folder to put parts into to be able to import them into Substance Painter. So to do so, right now I have the glass selected. We'll go export FBX, and within my mods folder, I've created a couple just junk folders here. One is going to be for texturing when we do color change stuff. The other one, I just have it new folder, and it's just a place where I dump everything. So I've already exported the body and the glass. So I just put that in there, selected objects. You don't even need the armature, just the mesh. You don't even need to use the experimental transform because that's more for in the game. Um, but just this, export it, and then we can come into Substance Painter. Now, to set up Substance Painter, there's a few things that I like to have available. So to start off, we're going to new, and for the template, I use the PBR metallic roughness with the alpha blend put into it. Some people, when you first install Substance Painter, it comes set up without alpha. It's just PBR metallic roughness. If you include the alpha blend on your template, you don't have to turn that on later for when we're doing glass. And the alpha blend is required for making glass transparent. So I haven't found any ill effects for having it on for the regular textures as well. So I just leave it on. I don't see a reason to be turning it on, turning it off constantly. So we'll do that and have it on Alpha Blend. For file, we'll select and we'll come into navigate to that dump folder that we made, and we're going to we'll pick the body for the first section, and then we'll go into glass afterwards. So we can leave all this stuff alone. Normal map type DirectX, document resolution. This is the starting resolution for your textures. I use 1K for pretty much all of my textures unless I have to do some really detailed work on the interior, like gauges and things where I want the text of the gauge to be nice and clear. Then I'll jump it up to a 4K texture. Um, but the larger textures are huge resource. um, 4K textures are really huge in sucking up all of the resources that the game is allowed to use. So for consoles, that's going to have a huge RAM impact and have your mod be one of the only ones that the player can install. Instead of being able to use 10 trucks, you might only be able to use 2. Um, it's an extreme example, but that's the type of impact that it may have. Everything else, we're just going to leave alone. We're just going to click OK. Now it brings in the model, and we can rotate it around. We're going to come over to these mesh maps, and we're going to bake the mesh maps. Just say bake selected textures, click OK. Now, as long as everything was UV mapped properly in Blender, it should look pretty much the same, except it's filled out all these different position maps and whatnot. So we'll go back to layers, and we'll come into materials here. We'll just randomly pick a nice glossy color. Click and drag it up onto there. not exactly the color I want. So we'll come in and we can change it. We'll go with something like that for now. Actually, you know what? Let's just make it a nice glossy black. So we have the texture, and again, I'm not going to cover everything on how to use Substance Painter. There's a million tutorials on YouTube and whatnot on how to actually use this program. This is more, again, getting it set up for use in Snowrunner and how to make the textures that you produce in Substance Painter usable in Snowrunner. So once you've got your textures all set up in the way you want, you're going to come down and click on Export Textures. Then we are going to want to pick the folder that it's going into. And it always defaults to Substance Painter, which is really annoying. So we're just going to come to My Games. We're going to go to Snowrunner, Media, Mods, and I like to have my textures go into my texture dump folder. The output template. This is one thing that you only have to set up once, and once you set it up, it's going to be good for the rest of the time you use the program, but setting it up the first time is going to be a little tedious. If you have access to Discord and whatnot, you could go on to the Snowrunner official Discord and ask around in the modding channels for the Snowrunner template for Substance Painter, and somebody will happily give it to you. And you won't have to actually set this up. You'll just have to import the template into Substance Painter. But if you don't have access to that, it's not the most difficult thing to set up. I've already started one here. So what you'll do is you'll click on the plus sign here to add a new preset, and it's going to put this new export preset at the bottom. You can rename it to whatever you like. I have a couple here that I've named Snowrunner. The first one was given to me, and then I've made my own edits to them to make different changes. So I've already set this one up, so that way there I have a good template, because it's not something that I remember vividly on how to do. So I kind of use this to give myself a template so I didn't have to keep clicking back and forth to the Snowrunner ones. So the first one we want is this normals. That's what the _n is for. These are, again, all the height maps. And we're just going to click create RGB. We're going to rename it the same way I have that named. So $ text set double underscore, 2 underscores there. So it's __n _D. And then we want this to have the normal DirectX RGB, which is over here. So what we're going to do is just click and drag that to there and select RGB channels. And that's going to set that exactly the same way. So __n _D with texture set. What that's going to do is this section of the file name, when it creates the file, will copy this name here. And that will be used in here. So basically what we're doing is we're telling Substance Painter to create this file name. So we can do that. The next one is going to be this DA. If you notice, actually in here, these are just saying _D. We can change those because we're using that older template. Again, having the alpha blend on there doesn't really seem to make much difference. So we'll put the _A so that way there the file names match. So to create the second one, we need RGB with alpha. So we're going to click there. This is base color RGB. So we're going to use base color RGB channels. And then the alpha is opacity with grayscale. So we're going to use opacity and from gray channel. So now we have the second one done. We just rename that underscore or $ texture set double underscore D underscore A. So there's always 2 underscores there. Then the last texture set is the shading, which is how glossy everything is, along with some of the metallic features and whatnot. So we need the RGB all broken out. We're going to go R plus G plus B. The first one is metallic with grayscale. So we're going to go metallic from grayscale. The second one is roughness with grayscale. So roughness, grayscale. And the last one is ambient occlusion with grayscale. Ambient occlusion, grayscale. And again, you would just rename this to match that. Texture set underscore underscore S underscore D. And there you have it. Those are the 3 main primary things you would need. If you needed emissive maps for light to shine from an object, you could add in this EM underscore D, and that is using base color RGB as well. So you could also add that in there if you needed to. Again, I haven't used emissive textures at all, so I omitted that from my first template that I made because it was extra files that it's creating that I just ended up having to delete. So to alleviate that, I created my own template and eliminated that one RGB. After you've set up your 3 different options, we need to set these to TGA. We do not want them as PNGs. We need them to be TGAs. So you come in and change those to TGA. That's a very important step. If it was at PNGs, the game will not recognize them and it won't convert them properly. So make sure that those are set to TGA. Okay, so we've chosen our folder, we've chosen our output template. You're going to say, based on output template, it defaults to PNG. We don't want them as PNG, we want them as the output template of the TGA files. Size based on texture set size is fine, and dilation infinite is okay. And you're just going to click export, and it exports those 3 files into that folder. So then what I'll end up doing is going into that folder, documents, my game, Snowrunner, media, mods, and my texture dump. And if you notice, I already have a bunch in here. What we're going to do is we're going to delete all those. So we have a nice fresh output. Save settings, file, export textures. Now I clicked save settings and it saved it here, but it only saves it for this session unless you save the entire Substance Painter file, and then it saves it to that file when you reopen it. However, when you start a new file from Substance Painter, it still goes back to the old defaults. So I'm going to re-export those. Save settings, come back in here, and we'll see that we have our 3 things. This is the main color of the truck. This is the shading for the truck, for how glossy it is, and this is the normal bump map. So we'll cut those, come back in here. We'll go into the tutorial, into textures, trucks. And these are all the textures that came with the truck, which we're not going to use. So we can delete all of those and paste in our 3 new textures. Now, knowing that our files names are all matching, what we can then do is shrink these down and start up Snowrunner. In the meantime, while that's loading, I am going to load up the glass. So project configuration, select, and we'll load in the glass. Say OK. Again, we need to bake the textures. So bake the mesh maps, bake select the textures. OK. That's not done loading yet. And what I like to do is, here, paste it to the mod browser. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll come in to the smart materials, and one of the default smart materials that they give you is called glass visor. And it makes for some really good glass textures. You just have to edit it slightly. So I'll click and drag that up there. Go into layers, and I like to take this glowing edges off. We don't need the edges glow. If there was any edges in it, it would make them glow, and it looks a little sci-fi-ish. So I actually made my own version of it. I just took that glass visor, deleted it like that, and then saved it as a new preset. You can come into the color and get rid of that blue tint a little bit. Some people like having the blue tint. They think it makes the glass look a little more realistic. I think having it just be in that fashion looks better. And now, since we already have our template with alpha blending, we don't need to do anything. The glass is showing up all nice and transparent. So we can export these textures. File, export. And again, because we're in the same instance, it kept all of our settings. Export, save settings. We'll navigate back to that texture dump. Grab this glass. Now you might be asking yourself, well, why wouldn't I just export it directly into that folder? You could. You could export it directly into the tutorial folder or whatever folder for the truck you're working on. But I will show you in just a minute why I prefer to have that extra folder as my dump folder. So we'll come back into the game, and we have to reconvert those textures that we just put in. Okay, so one important note, make sure you export your truck with all of the UV mapping that you did and all of the materials I failed to do so, and nothing is showing up. Small oversight on my part. Let's try this again. Haha, success. So as you can see, we now have body color and we have glass. Obviously, this model still needs a lot of work. It doesn't have an interior or anything, but it at least has some body color and some glass. So I think that's gonna wrap up this video for today. I think in the next episode we'll cover how to do color changing, and then in the final episode we will cover how to import a custom tire. So again, I thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks.